Welcome aboard Free Dive with C Point Digital, your go-to podcast for deep dives into the world of digital marketing. I'm Kristy.
And I'm Anna-Lynn.
Your hosts navigating through the currents of growth, strategy, and innovation in the digital realm.
We're going to talk. We're going to laugh. It's going to be a good time.
Let's dive in. We're just going to hack our way through this one. So today,
expectations.
I always like to temper expectations because that just feels fair. So you're going to love this one. Love it. Top-notch quality. Today is special because we have my guest host, Anna-Lynn, and we have Deb. We've had Deb a couple times, but we've never had Dan on the podcast. So welcome, Dan, for one. And we've got the quad of besties on the podcast today. So this is very exciting. So today we're talking about how horrible it is to be friends working remote from each other. We are forced to be in a long distance relationship.
Yeah.
And how terrible that is.
It is.
So we're going to talk about it. I feel like Dan should start us off because he's the furthest. Oh. Dan, I don't even know what country you're in right now. What country are you in?
I am actually, today I am in the same country as you, believe it or not.
Oh, well, that's even more annoying, actually.
I am still 3 hour time difference from you. So I'm in California right now, working on a visa so I can be in the country that I'm planning on being in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is where?
Far.
Yes. That is my life.
All I heard was you're far away. That's all I heard.
So
tell us what it's, I was just going to say, tell us what it's like being far away from us and how much you hate that.
So I've been to the office a couple times, mostly after COVID, because COVID just kind of messed everything up. And so I was in Asia during COVID the entire time. And it was kind of one of those things where if we left to go visit, it was basically moving because they weren't allowing people back in. So that actually was hard being remote then because I wanted to be around everybody. And just, like the time difference there was ridiculous. It was like 13 hours. So it was literally like, you guys would have a meeting at 8 a.m. Well, not 8 a.m., 10 a.m. And then I would be on the meeting, but it would be 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. for me, depending on where I was. So that was a little bit of a challenge. But I think especially when you get to be in person with people, like the times that the four of us were all together, I think because it was only maybe like a few days at a time, it was probably less productive than when we were remote. But
For sure.
I think it speaks more to us than it does the actual remote culture.
Correct.
But I think it's like it's nice to be able to be around people, especially the people that you work with the most or that you enjoy being around the most in a work environment. So like the remote side of things does definitely have its challenges, which is why I was so excited about this podcast because it's the four of us.
Yeah. How do you feel like when you came back from your visits with us, like that changed how you felt about the team?
Oh man. Yeah. It's just like, so I've been back twice since COVID. And each time there were new people in office. And even since I went back last, there's new people in office. So like the next time I go back, I'll be meeting even more new people. So it's kind of cool being able to keep up with everybody and to have an actual relationship with everybody. Because when you're completely remote, then it's kind of like, okay, I kind of understand your vibe through a camera, or in most cases through an email or through a message. Yeah. Like I can kind of guess, partly because C Point is C Point, but then partly also because I can kind of like understand, maybe your personality or humor. I can kind of like put pieces together remotely, but it's never the same as actually like being in front of you and being able to absorb all of that vibe at once. Yeah. So like when remote and electronic is is the basis for the work relationship, that can be a little challenging. When in person is the basis, and then remote for however long is the, the just the way it's going to function, that's so much easier because I already know the person. I already know the
Right.
real person, what I'm dealing with. So I think like those visits have been super good for me.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think that helps too, you've talked about before, like we have team meetings every week. And I've talked with Deb about this too. Like sometimes when you've had to be remote or you are primarily remote, if for some reason like those regular meetings get canceled, it's like your one connection to the team is not there. And so do you think that having like the regular meetings, it's not like a substitute for in person, but they can, do you feel like they go a long way in helping to stay connected with the team?
I think it does help to an extent, like in a work sense, absolutely. And I think I also understand why we would cancel them from time to time if there's just not big enough or pressing enough of an agenda. Then it's kind of like, why are we all stopping just so we can get on? And even as a remote worker, I feel that way too sometimes. If it's like, or not that I feel that way sometimes, but I can understand it, I should say. Because, do I want to jump onto a call for like 8 minutes and hear about something that doesn't actually have to do with me? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
So I can understand that part of it. But I think with the, like, if we went like an entire month doing that, that would be kind of hard. I think just like, occasionally canceling, like it's just necessary. It's more productive that way. So I can kind of understand that. But it like ever since I've been able to join those meetings, it has been so much easier to connect my work with everybody else's work. So that is a great thing now.
Yeah.
And I was thinking too, on a side point, like there's the big team meetings, but then there's different departments, different people that work together that we set up our own meetings. Like Dan and I have recently done with Adrian and Kevin. Like we all work on analytics, which on its own can be a very isolated department to work in. It's just you and spreadsheets and numbers and reports and things. So we're like, we need a meeting. We need to all be able to get together. And those are not 8-minute meetings. But they're super valuable to have better understandings of each other's jobs and just to have that, like, you're working together like you would be in office, but you're not in office. You don't have the commute. And that's been super helpful in keeping like the group feeling still connected, even though we're so far away from each other.
Yeah, and one of the things that you do when you're in person is you don't talk only about work stuff. Like there's a lot of conversation about, what you're doing outside of work or just normal talk. It's not all directly related to furthering a project or, you're sharing a meal together or you're doing something. So sometimes one of the things that I think is really important to do is if you are having to be remote or you are remote, to make it work is to have those kind of meetings that are kind of a hybrid of, we're going to talk about work stuff. We're going to get there. But everybody gets on at lunchtime. We're all eating together and we're talking and we're just reconnecting on a basic, human level, friend level. And then, it segues into, let's get around to talking about this now.
It's funny because this whole podcast is the result of that.
Yeah.
From this morning, Anna-Lynn and I were meeting to discuss a project, and then I had a question for Dan, so he hopped in, and then we're like, "Hey, Kristy, what are you doing?" And then started talking. We need to do a podcast together, and that was all like 2 hours ago, and that's just kind of how things snowball when we don't feel like, oh nope, the communication, the meeting has to only be about the topic at hand, and especially I know like for Anna-Lynn and I. We spend our days at home with our children So having the adult connection as well is nice, because we're at home with 12-year-olds to deal as our only contact for during the day, which is wonderful. And that's why we're appreciative of the remote option, but it also takes a different brain power for that versus this. So you got to kind of fuel both sides. You need to talk to adults sometimes.
Yeah. So
Dan-
Deb, how do you feel like the remote option has benefited you?
The remote option is really the only reason I was able to take this job in the first place. I was at a point where I really, I needed to go back to work and do something again. But after COVID, we had started homeschooling, and circumstances were such that I wanted to continue homeschooling. So to do that and have to work around, like to find a job, I also live far away from everything. I'm at least a 20-25 minute drive from everything. So to find something that would have a schedule that would allow me to still keep my daughter, even if I put her in school, trying to find work within those 6 hours plus commute time, I wouldn't have been able to do it. So the fact that C Point and Bill has been so flexible with come in when you can, get your work done from home if you need to, like any hybrid of that is great as long as the work's getting done. The fact that Haley, my daughter, comes with me to work when I go, and she's got a little desk. She does her schoolwork. I don't have to worry about what's happening with her. I know she's good. I get my work done, and it's just been set up so nicely for us so that we don't have to stress about that separation of work and personal. We're allowed to be more integrated than that. And that's been wonderful to be able, yeah. So that's the only reason that I was able to do this job at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I remember when Bill first started the company, like way back at the beginning, he had reached out to me, and it might have not immediately when he started C Point, but I think when he was starting to realize, okay, we need a bigger team and looking for people, he had reached out to me because I've known Bill for decades. And he had reached out and said, hey, do you want to work for me here at C Point? And at the time, I lived 3 hours away from the office in Kittery. And I had just had my daughter. And I was like, I can't do that. No, sorry. I'm not going to relocate. And I just had a baby. So no. But when the last time that he reached out, I was in a position where I was looking for something that was going to be mine. I was kind of, drowning in motherhood and needed like some adult space, and really wanted to get back into what I was passionate about and do something with writing. And the thing that sold me was he said, you can come in person or you can work remotely. And I had like a list of things that I was like, well, this has to happen. If you want me to work for you, I have to be able to, like, if I do come in office, can my daughter come with me? Are you serious when you say that remote is an option, or am I going to feel pressure to be in the office? Like, because some can do that. Some places are like that. They're like, oh yeah, remote's an option, but they frown upon it. So they'll make it very clear that they want you to be at your desk because that's where they think you're going to be the most productive. But I feel like that's a mistake when you take a look at moms, especially because we're productive everywhere. And Bill was just like, he measures productivity by, what gets done. It's not how many hours you're behind a desk. It's, are you getting your projects done? Are you hitting your deadline? And he's like, you can do that wherever you are. You can do it here in the office. And he would stress, like we were talking with Dan about, getting in person when you can, just to make those connections, because those can kind of sustain you when you are isolated and remote and away from everybody, and can help you not to feel so much like you're on an island. But I think he's the mindset behind providing the remote and allowing people to have space for the rest of their life and work their job into that picture instead of making everything else fit around work, I think is what makes him so successful and what helps our remote people be successful. Because when you don't have that stress, I know for me, when I don't have the stress of, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with everything else, with, you know, with my daughter, with whatever else is going on, you don't have that stress, then you have more of yourself to put into your job and into your project and into your, it just frees up more of what they hired you for. So it just seems like a no-brainer. And I don't understand the, you know, push that some companies are making now to just demand that their workers be in office and be like, that is the only way we want you. I don't understand it. I don't get it.
I think it's a lack of trust in work ethic, maybe.
It could be. And I do feel like in some cases that's probably valid. Not everybody is going to be, you know, diligent about how they are counting their hours or, you know, logging in and logging off. And there does have to be a level of trustworthiness, I think, for it to be successful.
Yeah, I've seen so many of those memes about people making sure their mouse is always moving so their boss knows that they're online. Like, have you seen those? Like, I feel like it's stuff like that.
Yeah, some people make it, you know, give remote a bad name for sure.
Yeah.
And companies do have to, like, they have to look out for that. Like, that is a concern. It's a valid concern. But
we're fortunate that Bill doesn't babysit us.
Well, he doesn't need to either.
He doesn't need to.
I don't know if it's just because he's a good judge of character or he has, you know, we'll have to.
I mean, the evidence is in the work.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like, he monitors, like, he's able to look at our timesheets and be like, he knows how long these projects are supposed to take. And there's nobody who's like, wow, they took 8 hours to write 2 display ads. Like, what's going on? You know, there's a level of trust that goes both ways in the company that, and, you know, we don't have anybody here who's abusing that, but that's not the case everywhere either, too. You know, I'm sure bigger corporations, there's plenty of dishonest people in the world. Yeah, it's harder to monitor. And some feel that the only way to, like, really police it is to be able to physically see these people in front of you doing the work. You know, and then they know they're getting their money's worth or they're getting what they're paying for.
Yeah.
So I get it. It's icky, but I do think, though, that there's more instances where remote, like having that hybrid option, is going to benefit a company more than it's going to hurt it.
And you make a good point that it does go both ways. Like, both parties have to be able to make it work. Like, the owners need to be hiring trustworthy people to be, you know, and be able to monitor things, not micromanage stuff. And then the employees need to be taking it seriously still, like still taking their job seriously, you know, and just because you're home, stuff still needs to get done. Like, it works both ways, and both sides have to be stepping up to make it work well. And we're fortunate we have a pretty awesome team that makes it work pretty well, because we are all over the place. I mean, we represent, like, how many different countries even at Sea Point, and all the different time zones. And as long as your client deadlines are met and you're able to be on client calls that you need to be on, other than that, work when it's convenient for you to work and get your job done.
Yeah.
And Kristy, you're in the office. You can't really do your job remotely. So you're in the office all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bill lets me live here, actually. This is my home. This is my home.
Get a couch
Yeah.
and a futon and a TV.
Yeah. He just gives me whatever I want, and I live here. Yeah, so there's some things that I can't do Matterport. I mean, technically that is remote. But
It's true.
yeah, I can't do it from home. I can't do it from home. I
Right.
can't do video work from home necessarily, like where I can't do recording, can't do droning from home. So there's certain things I just couldn't do, but many things I just choose not to do. And part of the reason is I used to live like 45 minutes away, and I worked from home more often then just because it was far to drive. But I'm fortunate in that now I only live 10 minutes away. I literally live on the same street as the office. So it's very easy for me to get here. And I just prefer, I think everybody prefers separating like personal life and work life and having like being able to separate in your brain. But especially as a creative type, for me to be able to be at my work desk here, I can compartmentalize easier and be like, I'm in work mode and not be distracted as much. And I'm very much I work on vibes kind of person. Like, I keep my environment creative and clean, and I know I'm in my creative space and I just work better that way. But more than that, like I just really enjoy being with my people here. And that includes in person or like when I get to have meetings like this with people who are actually remote. But I'm the extrovert in me. Even though I'm downstairs and most people are upstairs, and I prefer it like that because I can be left alone when I want to be. But like for each day, for Tim to just pop down and just come annoy me and sit next to me and watch what I'm doing, like those little moments, like it's very good for me morale wise, and I wouldn't get that at home. So it kind of just keeps me going. Bill will pop down and just kind of either chit chat or tell me good job, like whatever. Like that kind of stuff fuels me. So it's both. I get alone time to focus, but I also get like the comfort and emotional support of my people. So the times where like everybody's here, like really I love, but then the times when like almost no one's here is good for me too, because I'm just like in my work space. So I bully people a little bit to be like, please come in on Tuesdays because I need you. So if I had it my way, everyone would be here always because I love my people, but I take what I can get, I guess.
I think it's true too. Like I think about I live about 40 minutes from the office, so it is a little bit more of a commute. And so it's not always workable to be there every day. I have though, I've found that I've tried to be more in person when life lets me because of that collaboration and being able to see everybody, and like as a creative person, like being down there working with you or across the room from you and Deb, and when we're all in, when I'm in person, like those might not be the days that I get a lot of writing done or a lot of editing done.
Yeah.
But it's when we collaborate and come up with ideas, and it's like a think tank, and we just, so many things have come from just being in person and being around each other, and somebody saying something and oh my goodness, that's a great, we should do this. And there have been so many spontaneous ideas that have just been fantastic.
It's easier to share.
And easier to share. And so in person is, I think, essential when you live close enough to do either or, do the in-person or the remote, and you have both options. I think it is important to, keep that connection and to be in there a couple times a month or however often you can be for that collaborative spirit and just that reinfusion of feeling that you are part of something. And if you are 100% remote out of necessity, I think being intentional about creating those experiences that feel like an in-person experience, like being spontaneous about, hey, jump on a call with me. What are you doing right now? Let's just catch up for a few minutes, and just talk about what you're working on, or
Mm-hmm.
remembering that there are people there. You're not working by yourself. You're not alone. And not waiting to have a scheduled meeting
Yeah.
about a certain topic,
Yeah.
because that's not how the in-person works. You're not, I will sit down with you in 10 minutes and let's talk. You don't, at least not in our office. That's not what we do.
I feel like Dan is very good at that. I think
Yeah.
Dan's very good at that. What has worked well for you, Dan, being completely remote?
No, I was kind of thinking about that, and I think that kind of goes back to the being in person thing whenever you can be, because like when you are in person with people, you understand the relationship with the person and that they actually want to like have a moment with you. They want you to be a part of their work. And I think when you're remote for long enough, or if you don't know the people in person, you can kind of get into this I guess I don't know if it's a trap or like it's kind of like it's a concern where you don't want to bother people.
Yeah.
And you start to view yourself as like, oh, I'm just like, this needy remote worker that has no like work friends, and that's why he's calling me right now, and I'm in the middle of a project. Like that's what goes through your head sometimes when you want to call somebody, or when you want to, like we'll have an email chain of like 20 emails, and I'm like, wouldn't this be easier with a call? Maybe everybody is too busy for that. And so then you're just kind of like, oh, like, yeah, I kind of needed like human work connections, but I'm not going to do that because everybody's too busy. That's why we're emailing. So it's like, if you don't understand the people that you're working with, then that does make it a huge challenge. And I think that's kind of why I've tried to, I mean, like personally for my own sake, for my own sanity, like working sometimes, it's like just being able to have a call with people and having those moments of, like, hey, the first 15 minutes of this call is just absolute utter nonsense. And it's just that's just, there's something just very healing about that for a remote worker.
Bonding.
Where it's just, okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's bonding because you're reconnecting with people, but then it's also like, I don't feel like I'm burning your daylight when I'm on this call with you. Like you guys are actually happy to be there, and you're happy to participate and contribute to the team building nonsense that we do. And it's like, when we do that, then it's just like, okay, like yeah, we're still friends. Like we're countries apart, we're hours apart in time difference, but it doesn't matter because it's like we're still a team. And so that's like a really cool feeling to be able to just know I can just reach out to people and do that.
Yeah, I've made a point personally, like anytime Bill hires someone new that's far away, to try in the beginning to like reach out to them at least once, if not more. Like when Adrian started, like I would message him a lot and just be like, how's it going? Like, are you doing okay? Like, you fitting in okay? Like that kind of thing. And then like just this morning, Kevin messaged me just the most adorable message about our podcast and listening to it. And just like how it's been his way of getting to know us because we've never met in person yet. And just like, it's his way of like seeing us and getting to know our personalities. I just loved it. And like, he then immediately felt comfortable to roast me and like make fun of me. And I loved that. I was just like, see, look at these new ways we're creating to just become besties. Like, so yeah, things like that.
Yeah, I think I know when I've had to be, I haven't been able to be in office for a while now. And it can be so easy, I think, for remote people to feel like they're not essential.
Yeah.
Like the office is still running. I'm not physically there, but it's still in motion. Things are still happening. Decisions are being made.
Yeah.
I'm not visible. And you kind of can start to get this mindset, I'm out of sight. Am I out of their minds as well? Like,
You
am
work
I
here?
right? Oh, you're working, are you? So you can start to feel like you're kind of on the periphery and you're not really part of what is keeping the agency going, or you're not really important, or you're not vital and essential. And how many synonyms am I going to use? And you can just get that, you can start to get that mental creep where you start doubting your usefulness. And I think that's really dangerous. And I think that's really why it's important when you are remote, either out of necessity or temporarily, to make sure that you're still connecting with your team and making sure that you have those moments. Because if you start feeling that, it just can create this dialogue that maybe doesn't even exist, but it becomes your reality, and it can color your work and what you're producing. So you have to be really vigilant about how you do it, and making sure you stay connected, I think.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. So let's go around the room here. And if, like, for our viewers and listeners, if you guys had to all give a piece of advice or something that's worked well for you, either to employers or employees, what do you think your advice would be to make being a remote worker better? We'll start with Deb.
I think to piggyback off what Anna-Lynn said, like, just not getting the work done is important, but not being so obsessed with just the task that you don't connect and you don't have that relationship with the team. Even whether or not you need the team to do your job, that's still important. And that's something that can be forgotten when you're in your little bubble. In your office at home and just doing your thing, and you can become very disconnected very quickly. So making sure, like she said, to prioritize that stuff as well. That is something that I tend to struggle with. I get so down the rabbit trail and I got 1,000 things going on, and you think there's no time for the impromptu hour-long Zoom chat to reconnect with people. But then when it's done, you just feel so much more productive afterwards, and like, okay, this is what I'm working for. Like, we are all working together for these goals. Like, it just reminds you of that you're not in this alone. And that's been super important for me to learn.
Yeah, good one. What about you, Dan?
For employers, I would say just remember that each person has their own circumstances and their own needs. Maybe some people need to get out of the house and be away from, whatever's going on in their lives or at home, just so that they can focus on their work and be productive. And so they want to be in office. Some people might need a hybrid of that. And some people are just like, you know what, like, the office is just like, I get too social. I get too distracted. I get too whatever. So like every person's productivity, like, you have to learn that and work with that, as opposed to demanding that they fit into the type of productivity that you want them to accomplish. So whatever that person needs, just kind of focus on that. And that is what's going to make your company successful, because all those individual people will feel like they can be themselves when they work, but then they can also still be a part of the team that they need to be a part of. And then for employees, if you're a remote worker, I think kind of going along with what Anna-Lynn was saying, sometimes we like there is like a certain level of anxiety about it, because you have work that you need to do. You wonder if you're budgeting your own lifetime properly. You're wondering if you're going to be bothering other people. You're wondering if people even need you. Like the only time anybody emails me is when something is on fire. So it's like, you start to have these layers of anxiety that you're just building, and those only exist in your head. If you're a person that needs some in-person contact, then go get it. Like it's worth the drive. It's worth the plane ticket. Just go do it. And even if it's not about the productivity while you're there, you will still, like, the team building, the morale will be so much higher that when you get back, you will be recharged to be more productive than if you hadn't taken that break and gone there. And I think the other thing is just for if you're a remote worker, don't be afraid to say to whoever, whether it's a workmate that you feel comfortable with, or to your employer, hey, I feel like I'm stuck on an island over here. Just ping them about something, and just getting that little bit of interaction is going to relieve a lot of that anxiety, where you will, like, a lot of that anxiety is the reason we don't become productive. So like if you're comfortable working remote, and you can just kind of go off somewhere and jam for like 3 or 4 hours on your work and just get stuff done, like that's great. But there will be days where you won't feel like that. And when you feel like your life is on fire and your work-life balance is off and all of that, like, just it's okay for that to happen. That doesn't mean you're a bad remote worker. It just means you need to make an adjustment for that moment, and you'll be good. And so just figure that out and kind of roll with that. So yeah, for employers, work with the people and what they need. And for employees, when it feels bad, it's not as bad as it actually feels.
Yeah, and you made a good point. Like, the more you feel isolated, the more you isolate, the worse it gets, instead of just like cutting that off and like reaching out and doing something about it, big or small. I think that's a great point.
I like the point you made about anxiety too. I feel like if employers understood that anxiety about that work-life balance can be the biggest thief, I think that would help them to understand that if they can alleviate some of that anxiety that their workers have, if they're anxious because there is no remote option that allows them to have a better work-life balance, that anxiety is going to rob them of productivity. It's going to directly get in the way of their employees producing their best work. So if they can be flexible, I think flexibility is like the biggest thing. Be flexible and view them as whole people. Kristy and I talked about this a little bit in a previous podcast about seeing them as more than a skill set that you're hiring, that they're a whole person. They have, a life outside of work, and it's going to directly affect their work. So be flexible with them. Let them work to their full potential by giving them the environment that they need to work in. To the degree that you can. Like, not everybody can be as free, like we talked about how some people abuse the system and aren't trustworthy about it. But to the degree that they can be, if employers can be flexible, then they're going to get more productivity. They're going to get better results because their employees will be living better lives,
right,
and have better work-life balances. So,
yeah. For me, I would say, I think it's really important to remember to be a team player. on your team and kind of remember that like everyone's kind of in it together. So keeping your eyes open to opportunities to like to Dan's point, like reach out, but also like spend part of your week, the beginning of the week, and checking in with other people is so helpful. When people do that for me, it's so helpful. It doesn't have to be anything lengthy, just someone that you haven't heard from in a bit, like, hey, just thinking of you, missing you, so that it doesn't become, oh, do you still even work here? No one wants to feel like that. That's the worst. And so when you haven't connected in a bit, just thinking of you, you need anything, how's it going? Briefly, it doesn't have to be an extensive hour call. But we've gotten really creative in how many different group chats are we all in. And sometimes you have to silence them, but then sometimes like the four of us have bonded on such a deep level because I mean when Dan's here it's unhinged. It's like I hate to say it, but if you were here full time, it would be chaos. Like we cannot even function because we're just constantly being silly and playing. But we are all so close because like we are able to care about how the others are doing. And I think that in any work environment, you know, you don't have to be in love with your coworkers, but to care about them as individuals and understand that you're on the same field as them. They're struggling with their personal life and getting their work done too. And so to be the person that can just be like, hope it's going okay, whatever, it doesn't take a lot. And so whatever ways you can get creative with just being a part of the team rather than creating your own island, I think that goes such a long way with helping you, helping them, and just being likable. I think it creates good relationships that are long lasting. So it's good for morale.
And it is funny. I was thinking like we all worked together before Dan had come for a visit, but then that visit like bumped this whole friendship up to like next level. Like,
yes.
And we've been maintaining it now for however long it's been since that first visit when we
I
all
have a specific memory of Dan walking out the door and me telling him, just leave, you've got to go, because I was crying. Like, walk away now, because we hugged so many times, and I was like, you've got to just go. You have to just go.
Rip off the Band-Aid. Just do it.
And you know what's funny is like I'm back out here in California. This is like I grew up here. And like I still have my mailing address here, even though we were in different countries and stuff. But I have to come back here for all of my visa work because I still have a California address. When I come back and visit my friends, I'll repost things that we'll put on the agency like Instagram or whatever. And people here are like, oh yeah, so like that's one of your work friends, right? Like they'll know who I'm talking about, even though they've never met you guys.
Work friends? I'm offended.
Yeah, I know. It's what they know, and this is also where I grew up. So
best friends, best friends. You mean the loves of my life?
The only people that matter.
The people in my will.
For anybody watching this is literally what we do for like the first 15 minutes of our calls, and then after that,
15.
Like, yeah, I guess
Dan, do not lie. You and I have had a creative meeting that lasted 3.5 hours.
This is true. I remember that. And we did get stuff done. So that's the thing. It's like we did get stuff done. Like we're not going to talk about the percentages, but we did get stuff done. But yeah, so like if you're watching this, like this is exactly what your remote people should feel like. This is what it should feel like. If it doesn't feel like this, then you have some adjustments to make in the remote worker environment. That part
you
of
can
your
get
work
there.
You can do better.
You can do better.
When you know better, you do better.
That's right.
There you go. That sounded a lot nicer.
This?
Yeah.
You can get in on your coworker's will is the point you should leave this podcast with.
If that's not the level you're at,
what are you even doing?
Right. You're wasting time. Right.
Just kidding.
I know.
The best part about it, this is like,
I love you guys.
There'll be times where this will like cut in and out, and so I have to fake like I'm like, oh yeah, I know exactly what they're laughing about.
Oh my gosh. You know what? It's always funny, so you don't even have to worry.
Oh, that's why I'm not.
You'd be laughing.
You always agree. It's always funny, so
There you go.
don't worry about it. There you go. Concluding comments, my friends.
It's all about the team. Work culture is just as important as the work itself. And if you don't think so, then you're not operating at the capacity you could be.
True.
And neither are your employees.
Mic drop.
If you're gonna be their world away from their family, their life outside of work, then you need to make it a good one, or they're not going to give you their best. It's that simple.
Yep. Well, I want to use the conclusion of this podcast to announce a special secret announcement that Dan is actually moving to Maine next week.
Californians need a visa for Maine.
Surprise!
That's why. That's it's like a different country out there.
This is also a surprise to Dan. I know that. But I wanted to announce it to the entire world on this podcast so that everyone, including Dan, would know.
And would start trying to make that happen.
Make sure you tell your wife.
I will. I will let her know. Yes.
Like we always say, I get what I want. Always. Do not listen. Tim knows by now. I told him today. I was like, we're going on the boat today. And he was like, how about Thursday? And I was like, how about you do what I say and we go now?
See what she has to deal with when you're not
right
here,
now,
Dan?
I am putting the crown on Kristy's head.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's not even a question. We go when I say we go. We're going.
See, Tim should be on this call so he can see like how it's supposed to go.
You know what it is? Number one, I don't think he listens to these podcasts, so it's fine. I can talk about him. And number two, I would even if he did. And number three, I think it's because he's afraid I'm going to catch a bigger fish than him. And so it's kind of like I'm going to take my Barbie fishing pole and I'm going to catch just like this 3-foot bass. And he's going to be like, this sucks that she did that.
I'm not a man. Yeah.
He's been fishing his whole life. This is my first time fishing with a Barbie fishing rod.
You'd probably like just a thing. You'd probably hold up. You wouldn't even need the Barbie pole. You would probably just toss your tinsel hair, look over the edge of the boat, and be like, And the fish would just jump into the boat, into your hands.
And I could take one of those fish photos.
Yeah.
How do they hold it? By the mouth, right?
By the mouth. You should get a picture of you holding Tim like that. Be like, Tim, this is the only fishing
we are
picture
officially
you need.
Derailed.
I have ruined this podcast. I'm so sorry. Watch this be the one he listens to. He has listened to the whole episode to get to this point, and I don't believe he will. But if he does, I love you so much, Tim. Love you, bestie. Anyway, that's the Free Dive podcast. Thanks for being here with our nonsense. We're going to have to do the 4 of us again.
Yes.
What else? What can you do?
Agreed.
So if you're listening and didn't like it, sorry, like our regrets, but obviously you did. So congrats. Like,
if anyone's listening to this point, then they're finding some entertainment value in it.
yeah, of course they are. Okay, everyone say goodbye now. Say goodbye, say goodbye, say goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks for being here. Till next time. It's the end.
No, it's not. There's more.
There's always more.
Don't be sad. You can catch our full video interviews on our YouTube channel. Come find us.
And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with your friends so that we're not sad.
And follow us on TikTok.
And Instagram.
It'll make your day happier, promise.
And we'll know if you do. Until next time.